Hello everyone, welcome to Cutie Pie Collective. Today I'm going to be showing you something a bit different. Now, we've used gouache on the channel before in our historical illumination videos, but today I'm going to be showing you how I used gouache to paint a large rice paper lantern to look something like a stained glass light cover. This video is going to be the first in a series of me trying to finish up my unfinished projects lying around the house. Now, this project started last summer. So it's been a while. It took me a while to finish, and I'm so excited to have it done and looking beautiful. Now, last summer, my mom and aunt came home very excited after a standard trip to Ikea. Who doesn't love a good Ikea run? They had found those large paper lantern light covers, the ones that look like a big globe, and had thought it would be a fun craft to decorate them. I was completely on board. It sounded like a fun, quick thing that we could do together. Now, I had made that assumption before I had actually seen what they had purchased, and y'all, they bought the biggest ones. The huge ones. The ones that are as wide as a standard doorway. Ask me how I know this? Because I had to hang mine in a doorway to be able to finish it. At any rate, my little art gremlin brain was already cooking up ideas on how I wanted to decorate this paper lantern that I hadn't seen yet. A fatal mistake. I had recently seen an article about Tiffany lamps, and I've always loved Tiffany Glass. Shout out to the Morse Museum in Winter Park, Florida. It is a beautiful place with an amazing collection of Tiffany pieces, and I've loved going there multiple times in the past. Anyway, I love this pond lily table lamp, and I wanted to use it as the base inspiration for my lantern. I started by sketching out the base shapes of my flowers, leaving everything as basic outline shapes as possible, similar to blocking out a stained glass piece or when designing a coloring page. It was around this time that I started to realize just what I had signed myself up for, but I was in too deep to back out now, and the art gremlin demanded to see the finished piece. These flowers are huge, guys. Most of the open blooms are bigger than my hand. After sketching, I went through and painted over my lines with a glossy black acrylic paint that I'd watered down just a bit so it would go on smoother and be not quite so gloopy. I feel like anyone who works with acrylic paint can understand the gloop problem that can come with using it. To get that stained glass look, we want bold lines that light won't be able to get through, so acrylic is the way to go in my opinion. After painting and some more painting and oh my gosh, more painting, I had lines. I was feeling pretty proud of it, but I was absolutely baffled at how long this was taking me to make. Like, yeah, it was big, but why was it taking so long? I think I was about 7-ish hours of work in, and we hadn't even made it to the colors. Now, after making sure that all of the acrylic was dry and nothing was going to get messed up with the addition of more water, it was time to move on to the colors, which in my opinion is where this piece really started to come to life. I went with cool tones for the background and warm tones for the flowers. I also decided to use gouache paints, something that we have seen on the channel before. They are very similar to watercolors, but a little more opaque, which allows for easier layering. But they are still lightweight and transparent enough that light can get through them. The biggest champion of this project was probably Prussian blue. I could make an entire video about how much I love it as a paint. It is so dark and pigmented, but you can water it down and get the nicest light blues. Because it is so transparent, it helped a lot with layering and blending the other background colors and giving a lot of variety and interest while keeping everything very cohesive. One thing that was interesting to me was that water soaks into the rice paper of the lantern very easily and travels along the ridges of thicker lines that run throughout the paper. That water would also carry pigment with it, giving these little perfectly spaced lines of color where I really didn't want them. However, once everything was said and done, you can't really see these lines coming through the other paint, so don't sweat it. I found that the paint went on best when the paper was damp or the paint was very watered down, especially for the first layer. The paper only absorbs so much water, so it can get wet faster than you might expect, but it is also pretty absorbent considering how thin and delicate the paper appears. It also seems to absorb the pigment or color of the paint very easily if the paper is dry. So if you put down a heavier, more pigmented layer on dry paper, that paint is staying there. It is soaked in, it is not going to blend out or lighten up with additional water. So start light, start with less paint than you might think, and go on with a damp paper. For very even and level colors, I found that using a very watered down paint worked best, because then you could soak the paper through with that light wash and it would be very even. Whereas if you're wanting to do more blending, feathering, letting those paints mix together, dampen the paper a little bit first, then go on with more pigmented paint and blend it out into each other. I tried to mix and layer and have the background colors bleed into each other. Let it loose and let the paint flow where it wants to go. It's supposed to be kind of messy. I found that I really enjoyed exploring the different shapes the paint would make as I put it down. The other two colors I used for the background are violet and emerald. And while these worked, I probably would go with a different purple in the future, but my kit only had violet, so I made it work. The reason I would have gone with a different purple is because I found that my violet, when watered down, had a tendency to get kind of pink, which was the opposite of the cool, more bluish purple I had in mind when I picked out the colors. It was around halfway through the background that I started to question all of my life's decisions. This project was taking me forever, and I didn't understand why. But a quick little Google search and some circle calculators later, I realized that this one ball was basically a 4-foot by 4-foot canvas, and that made me feel better about my progress. Another big thing to remember is that gravity exists, and you'll be using very watery paint. Start high and then move down, guiding that water and paint in a controlled fall so you don't have drips running wild. For stems, I went with leaf green and lemon yellow. I find these two play very nicely together, and I did want to use more than just one color on all parts of the lantern. I wanted more variation and interest, and I found that lemon yellow can really make leaf green pop. After the background and the stems were finished, it was time to move on to the flowers. I started with a light base wash on all of the flowers and buds, using either my medium yellow or my crimson. I found that the crimson could actually be watered down to a very delightful light pink, which was a little bit surprising considering how bold of a red it looks in the dish. Another thing I had to keep in mind while doing this project is that considering that the paints are somewhat transparent and the paper got translucent when wet, the colors changed a lot between when the paper was wet and the paper was dry. So if you're trying to follow along or do a similar project, don't decide you hate how something looks until you've seen it dry. One of the things that I was really worried about when I was doing my first layers of yellow was that after I painted them, I thought they looked very gray and dark. And I was worried that I had chosen the wrong paint or done something incorrectly and that I was ruining my lantern as I went. Thankfully, I was able to take a step back and let things dry and set, and then I realized that it was just the nature of the paper to turn kind of grayish and see-through as I was painting. Give your project time to dry before you decide you hate it, and then come back and do those layers and let them dry before you decide you hate them. Take everything one step at a time and everything will turn out okay in the end, I promise. After I had the first layer down and everything was dry, I went back and added additional layers for details and shading and interest. I only used my two colors for the flowers, my medium yellow and my crimson. I wanted everything to be very homogeneous and go together well while still being different and interesting. And I found that even with only those two colors, Layering them in different ways and using them in different intensities gave a lot of variation while still making all of the flowers look like they could be the same type of flower. And guys, she turned out to be a beauty. I loved her, I hated her, and then I loved her again. Here's how she looks just hanging around, and here's how it looks over a lamp. The light and colors come through so nicely, and the lines are dark enough to really give it that stained glass look. Does it look exactly like my inspiration? No, but it was never meant to be a one-to-one. One of the beautiful things about Tiffany's floral stained glass is that it was based on real flowers and plants. You'll never find two flower beds that look exactly the same, and therefore I think it's even more lovely knowing your art is also a one-of-a-kind natural wonder. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed watching me go through this process. And for those wondering, this ended up taking me about 17 hours of work. Yes, she was a project and a half for something that was originally supposed to be something quick to do over a weekend, but worth it. If you decide to make one of your own, please tag me on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook so I can see how yours turned out. Until next time, let's make something.